Hi, and welcome to another Mothman-podcast. I'm your host, Daryl,
And I'm your co-host, Dan.
and tonight we're going to be looking back into our emails. And I've said in the past that we would bring you some of our stories, and we've kind of combined some of the stories so they'll flow a little bit better and pertaining to some of the same subjects. So tonight, Ann's going to get into these emails, and we're going to just give you a story of what we found out from our listeners. So again, thanks for everybody sending in emails. And for you that haven't sent in any, please send them in and tell us your thoughts on the subject that we were talking about on that podcast and any other subjects that you would like for us to talk about. So with that said, Ann?
Okay, this email was from listener Elizabeth. And tell me what you think. How would you like to be roused from sleep like this? Elizabeth says, one night I was awakened by a violent slap on the left side of my face, like with someone's open hand. Elizabeth at first thought it was her prankster sister, but then saw by the clock that it was 1:27 a.m. and her sister was sound asleep in another room. And the attack wasn't over. Elizabeth felt pulling on her hair so much that it jerked her head around. Then her comforter started to be pulled off of her bed, or at least that's what she said it felt like. She wanted to scream, but felt paralyzed. The ghost apparently wanted her attention. She then heard a woman's voice say, "Listen to me, listen to me." And the police faded off in the darkness.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
pretty interesting. We've talked about this in past episodes. I just, it would take a lot of energy.
Right.
Just thinking back to our investigation on Old Salisbury Road, where the entity drained every bit of our energy from all of our camera batteries to say, "Hi, Daryl. I'm Jimmy. I'm Jimmy." But to do that, it would just take so much energy, and I was just wondering how, I'd like to know the history of that area or that house, or there's a lot of things that we could, look into. If you would like
Right.
to email us back with a little bit of history and give us a little bit more data. You didn't want to be recognized on the air, which we definitely are not going to call your name out on the air, but we would like to hear from you again and ask that you give us a little bit more detail. Okay, Ann, your next one.
Okay, the next one is from Mary Ann. She called it Nasty Little Ghost. She felt the slap of a ghostly hand, and it was around 2005 at her aunt's house in Batangas, Philippines. Her attack was preceded by a sighting of the alleged assailant. She was relaxing on her aunt's bench swing when she saw a small girl in a red dress peeking out of her aunt's front door. When the child saw that Marianne saw her, she ducked inside. Marianne assumed it was the child of a visitor, but when she checked, there was no one in the house except her aunt and her aunt's sleeping child, who was not wearing red. Marianne dismissed the incident as her imagination and returned to the swing for an afternoon nap. Exhaustion plus cool wind send me into a deep sleep, is what she was telling herself. That's what she says, only to be awakened by a hard slap from a small hand. When she opened her eyes, she was expecting to see her aunt's kid. She was shocked to find that there was no one out there.
Well, there's another one that we were talking about earlier about having the energy we listen to a lot of people talking about they see a ghost or they hear a ghost or they see, it's very seldom we get those about actual physical contact.
Right.
So thank you for sending in the email and sharing your I guess your incident with us.
Story, yeah.
In your story. But we would love to hear from you again and see how things are going now. So be sure to email us back and let us know.
I think that I'm a fairly brave person. Not a lot shakes me. But when you're by yourself and these things are happening, I imagine that's pretty unnerving.
I would agree. It's just the fact that they're not really violent. They're just more or less trying to get your attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen that a lot in the past when we've talked to people about they they're people being scratched and this sort of thing. Now that's pretty
Right.
devilish right there.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's like something like a small hand slapping you or something like that, it's almost like they're reaching in from another dimension to get your attention.
Right.
Or did they pass through to our dimension when they're doing it to someone else? So these are
Yeah.
questions to be answered in the future.
Well, I see that as if it was a human that slapped me, I would not take kindly to that at all. So there are other ways to get your attention.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Right.
So thank you for sending the email in.
Okay. So the next one came from listener Melanie, and she says that getting slapped or pushed is one thing, but getting shoved downstairs where you could possibly break your neck is another. Yet that's what happened to her in 1982. She was at Gentleman Jim's restaurant. It's now Ashley's of Rockledge in Rockledge, Florida. The restaurant had a reputation for being haunted by the ghost of a woman who had been murdered on the nearby railroad tracks in the 1920s. Melanie was there on a double date with friends, and they were hoping to catch a glimpse of something otherworldly. She says that we did see the lamp over the salad bar sway continuously all night. So they were pleased that they had and felt like they had got their money's worth as far as supernatural sightings. Melanie was soon to get more than her money's worth, however. She says as they were getting ready to go down the stairs, she told her date to get in front of her because she was known to be clumsy and she didn't want to fall down the steps. So Melanie says they all got in front of her and they were making jokes about the ghost and feeling pretty frisky. As they were going down the steps, she felt a huge shove against her back and fell down the stairs. And she says that her wonderful companions moved to the side and let her fall. No, she says when she looked back up, she could clearly see that there had been no one behind her that could have shoved her. I guess nobody that was living anyways.
Well, we appreciate you sharing this with us. And hopefully there's other people out there with these kind of stories that they'll write in and we'll share theirs. So there's because everybody likes to hear these stories.
Right.
I mean, this one's back 1982. So if anything happened to you anytime in your life, be sure to email us and let us know a little bit about it and share it with the world.
Yeah. Now I feel if you're being pushed down steps, that is more than trying to get your attention.
I agree.
That is not
but
Casper.
It definitely got her attention.
Oh, it for sure did. Yeah. Okay. The next one is from Cassie B. She also had an unpleasant experience with the staircase. She and her husband were visiting his older brother's house during the Christmas holidays. Her brother-in-law had warned her that the house was haunted, which she didn't mind because she had been in haunted houses before. But then he revealed that the spirit liked to push people down the stairs. And Cassie says, sure enough, the ghost did not disappoint. She was coming down the stairs to look for her husband when all of a sudden she felt like somebody pushed her feet out from under her. She ended up falling down the first 4 stairs, and she says that everyone came running to make sure she was okay, and they asked what happened, and she told them what happened, that it felt like someone pushed her legs out from under her, and she just fell down the stairs.
Wow. That's scary because you could get seriously injured that way.
Yes, you could. You could end up being a ghost
yourself.
yourself.
So, appreciate you sharing that with us. I just hope that they can either get that spirit out of the house or...
Right. They need to sage those steps.
Yeah.
Or
put in an
do
elevator.
something. Yeah. A chair lift,
Chair
whatever
lift,
they're
yeah.
called. Yeah. Okay, the next one, let's see who this is from. It's from a young man named Char. He may be an old man now. I'm not sure. he says, as rare as ghost attacks are, being shoved on a stairway is one of the most common occurrences, and a number of people also report the feeling of being strangled. This usually happens at night. Char reports that this happened to his father when they were living in a house in Pepperell, Massachusetts, a place they long have considered haunted. The family felt it was the ghost of old Charlie Hartwell, a farmer who once lived on the property and died in a fire. The family had a number of strange incidents, unexplained banging on the walls and doors, TVs, radios, and lights going on and off by themselves, tools going missing, then reappearing, sliding doors opening by themselves to let the dogs out, lights in the barn where there is no electricity, and more. And Char says, our ghost Charlie liked to scare my sister for some reason and really didn't like my dad. One time, the father was sleeping and he felt something on top of him, and then it started to strangle him. And Char says, my dad couldn't get up and he started to cry because he was so scared. He held on to his cross that he was wearing and started praying, and then it went away.
Yeah, that's funny because I've heard of a lot of stories where people have experienced a ghost type entity,
right?
And they grab their cross and start praying, and the entity goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Here again, I don't know if it was just coincidence or if that really works by praying, and if that is the case, maybe that is the devil's side of the story coming through. So it's just interesting to talk about.
It is, and I think if they're I feel as though if they're harmful in any way, there is a good chance that they're a demon, and I'll call them
what
the
it
Lord.
Is. That's right.
Immediately.
I just and I don't understand. We've had some investigations where the people have had entities which they haven't been really hurting anybody. They pull the covers off and they feel them touching their bodies and things like that. So here again, you got to think the entity must know what he's doing if he's pushing people downstairs,
right? And
if he's choking people, that's got to be hatred into that entity that's trying to come out,
right?
So
yeah, I've had experiences, and it's been in two of my mom's houses. However, my mom and we both are kind of comfortable with it because we just tell ourselves if they're not hurting us, they can stay.
Sure.
If they're not bothering us,
you can occupy the same space at the same time.
Yeah, it's not a problem. So we don't get very shook up about that.
And it's just like I keep bringing up the old Salisbury Road case because I think it's so interesting.
Yeah.
But they're living with these entities in the house, and they're not having any problems at all other than losing their keys, and they show back up later.
Yeah. No, that would make me mad if I had somewhere to go.
Showing tricks, playing little tricks here and there, throwing things around the room, or the only thing that I saw was really bad is when the light fixture unscrewed itself and fell from the ceiling.
Oh, wow.
But that's, here again, where were you at? I mean, was it meant to get your attention, or was it meant to do harm to you? So
right. When I was in my 20s, I've thought about this before. I don't know that I would even know if I was being haunted when I was in my 20s because I was so disheveled. I lost everything.
Right.
I'd put it down somewhere and forget where it was. I'm much more organized now, but I think at the time I could have been haunted. Ghosts could have been hiding my keys, and I didn't even know because I just assumed I hid them or, put them somewhere.
I might have one in my garage because every time I'm working on my motorcycle or something, or my car, I'll put down the tool and I go back. I can't find it anywhere.
Oh, wow.
I said, I just had it in my hand. Where could I do it?
Right.
But that's just me just putting stuff down and not knowing where I put it.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't do that anymore. I'm much more organized now. But when I was in my 20s, I was all over the place and couldn't keep up with anything. My mom would always tell me that I'd lose my head if it wasn't attached.
Well, that's probably me too. But when it comes to spiritual and ghostly entities, you'll know the difference.
Right. Okay. So the next one is from Roger. He says he had a close call with the shadow person that he felt was trying to attack him. And this was in the middle of the afternoon. And this was in 1967. He was a college student working for the summer at a large motel in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. He lived with several other employees at an old stone house a few miles down the road, where a brutal murder had allegedly taken place. It was a bright, sunny Saturday afternoon when Roger was in his bedroom trying to catch a quick nap. He says he remembers the events clearly. He looked at his clock, and it was 1 p.m., and as he laid on his bed and closed his eyes, instantly he just was overcome with fear. And he opened his eyes, and out of the wall on this bright, sunny afternoon came a black shadow man with arms outstretched towards him. He says its shape changed slightly as it left the wall and drifted towards him. It was a full torso, about 6 feet tall. He says he uttered a gasp and again closed his eyes for an instant. He opened them again, and it was still drifting towards him with its arms outstretched like it wanted to choke him. He says he was paralyzed with fear and gave another and louder gasp. He said it came to within 3 to 4 feet of him, then dissipated.
Wow. Yeah. That's very interesting because
Right.
I've heard stories on the shadow people, but then I have to kind of think back, where was the sun and where was this, where was that? But that that seemed pretty real.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't studied that much on the shadow people. I think we did a podcast on it one time, but we need to go back and research that a little bit more.
Yeah, they're very interesting.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that story to our attention, and we will research that for you and get back to you. And like I said, no matter when it happened in your life, if you'll just send us an email and tell us about your story, we'll be more than happy to discuss it and talk to you. And we will bring this one back up in another episode where we will actually go in and try to research a little bit more on shadow people.
Right. There's a podcaster named Heidi Hollis, and she talks a lot about shadow people and the Hat Man. I listen to her. I really enjoy her podcast, and there is so much information about the shadow people. So after this story, I will listen to more of her podcast and see what I can find out from her.
Right, and we'll bring it to our listeners.
All right.
Not trying to take away from your listeners there.
No, absolutely not. We are listeners.
That's right.
Okay. So the next story came from a listener, and they called themselves Haunted Michigan. They also reported an attack by a shadow person, and they said this occurred in 2008 at a casino in Michigan. She said the Haunted Michigan said that she was staying at the hotel casino. The casino hotel with her 2 small children and her brother and his wife. She says she woke around 3:30 in the morning to the sensation of a pressure on her side. It was kind of pushing her down. She says she thought it might be one of her daughters pushing her down, so she raised her arm to try to push off whoever was on top of her. She says she felt something substantial, but definitely not either one of her kids. She said she got really frightened. She was lying on her side, so she turned her head to her right shoulder to get a glimpse of what was on top of her. She says she saw a large dark funnel, no real shape to it, and she heard a mocking laugh. She says she struggled, but she couldn't get it off of her. She decided to let the entity know that it should get off of her in the name of Jesus Christ. The funnel suddenly hit the ceiling and disappeared.
Wow.
That sounds kind of similar to the old hag. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of similar to those stories. I wonder if that was that old hag or if it was something related.
I don't think the old hag was in that area, though, was it?
Well, it happens everywhere. Anybody can experience the
Well, that's
the old
true,
hag.
but usually it's in a rural area or something, isn't it?
Okay.
I've never heard it being in a popular area,
Yeah.
like a casino or something like that.
Yeah, well, I think I've also heard it called like sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I guess that can happen to anyone.
Right.
Yeah. The next one, let's see, this is from Yolanda. And she says, what's more terrifying than being attacked by an unseen entity is seeing one of your children being attacked by an unseen entity.
Oh, wow. That would,
Right.
Yeah.
She said that's what happened several years ago. She lived with her 4 children in an ordinary 4-bedroom home in Germantown, Pennsylvania. One night at about 10:30, Yolanda was home with her 14-year-old daughter, Tiffany, who was sound asleep in the back room. She says she walked to the bathroom, and on the way out, she noticed that Tiffany's door was cracked just a little. She says she didn't really pay it any mind and headed back to the bedroom and relaxed until she was startled by Tiffany's door slamming loudly. She yelled Tiffany's name twice and got no response. Then the horror began. She says before she could get up off the bed, she heard her screaming, "Get off me." She says she ran into her room and found her lying on her back in the dark, shaking and trembling. She asked Tiffany what happened, and Tiffany said that someone was beating her. She had scratches all over her arms. I knew no one was in the house but the 2 of us. And she says she pretty quickly moved her family out of that house. She did find out later, though, that 5 people had overdosed on drugs in the room that Tiffany slept in.
And here again, we talk about the spirits having a dramatic ending
Right.
that causes them to maybe stay in the immediate area.
Yeah.
And that ties back to the dimensions also, is that they can't pass through to the other dimension because their spirit is, for whatever reason, is hung up in this dimension.
Yeah, I'd like to know what makes them stuck somewhere, why they can't pass over.
Yeah, we need to look at the statistics on ghost and violence. That's one of the things I was looking at on Old Salisbury Road, and one of the things we came across in the basement, we could hear like a mother calling for her daughter or something like that, and then the daughter's upstairs. So I'm thinking that maybe whatever happened to those entities was a violent ending, and that's the reason the entities can't leave this dimension.
Now, didn't in that video, the Old Salisbury Road, y'all went into the basement and there was something crawling on the ceiling or something?
Yeah, my sound man at that night said that he didn't like things on the ceiling.
Yeah.
Because you could just see their arms and legs and a head, and they were walking on the ceilings, and
Right.
that's through our camera system. And that doesn't look right.
Right.
So we told them that it's not so good in your basement, but
Right.
they haven't really had any problems out of that. But,
Listeners, if you want to see that, those videos, you can go on YouTube, and what is it, the Mothman-podcast on YouTube as well, and check out those videos. They have a camera that shows you a stick figure where you may not be able to see an entity. It'll put a stick figure where it recognizes a body or something
or
similar.
energy.
Or
right.
energy,
Yeah.
yes. And you may not be able to see it, but you're able to see that stick figure. So the cameraman has that camera, and you can see something crawling on the ceiling.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It is
And
definitely interesting.
Now that this COVID thing is over with, hopefully for good. Well, it's never going to be over with good. I think it's going to be like a common goal. There's going to be different viruses or versions of it year round, but I think it's not as deadly of a virus as it was at one time, especially for younger people. Older people, everything's deadly. So, hopefully we'll get out there and do some more investigations pretty soon.
Yes.
And put a team together and go do some hunting. But thank you for sharing your stories with us. And as I've said so many times before, if you have a story that you would like to share with us, or if you have an opinion about the podcast, please email us at mothman-podcast, all one word, .com. Excuse me. That's our site on the computer. It's mothman-podcast, all one word, at gmail.com. And you can, but you can find the email address on our mothman.com. So thank you for listening to us tonight. I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode.
I really did. I really enjoyed tonight. I love seeing these stories and being able to share them.
And, it's just me. I've had a little bit more time than Ann to research, and so I've just been researching different things, and you'll find our research on our podcast. So please continue to listen, and thank you for listening tonight. So until next time, I'm Daryl, the host.
And I'm Ann, your co-host.
And we would like to say good night.
Good night.